Okay, we're going to read the book Everything Weather. So I'm going to rev up before I start to read it just to make sure I understand what it's going to be about and what the author will teach me. Wow, look at this cool fact. It says Doppler radar is so sensitive that it can detect movements of insects or dust in the air. That's a really awesome fact, but hold on a second. I think I want to read this in a little bit of more of a grown-up way. Instead of just jumping right into the middle of the book, I'm going to read in a way that gets me ready to think about what this text will be about and how the whole text will go. So I'm going to start over. Let me start back by looking in the beginning. Okay, so this book is called Everything Weather. So before I preview even further, I'm already thinking of some subtopics that this book might contain. I haven't read a book on weather in a long time, but weather affects my life in a lot of ways, so I pay attention to the weather. I know a lot about the weather from watching the news. I also know how nonfiction books usually tend to go. They're organized in different subtopics. So since this book is called Everything Weather, I expect it's probably first going to start by talking about basic kinds of weather, maybe like rain, snow, those kinds of things. And then maybe it'll go into talking about storms, maybe like hurricanes, tornadoes, extreme weather. Let's skim the table of contents so we can find out. All right, so I'm looking at the table of contents and I'm noticing there are some topics that say things like what's the weather, weather extremes, weather predictions, fun with weather, and then underneath each of those are a few topics or subtopics that fit within each of those. So wow, this really does cover a lot. And I was right, it does start with types of weather in the first section, what's the weather? And then it teaches about extreme weather in section 2. But then there's 2 more big sections that I really didn't expect and I didn't predict. The third one is called weather predictions, and the fourth one was fun with weather. So I didn't know that those were going to be in here, so it's a good thing I looked at this table of contents. So I wonder what those will teach. I'm going to flip to page 10, one of the first sections. All right, so this section is called Whether or Not. And I want to point out a couple of things about this. I'm noticing that the way that this is organized is it has text boxes and pictures that go with each. So each picture has a nice pop out text box that kind of explains what's going on with the picture and different examples of weather. So this is kind of cool because the first text box I notice says, what isn't weather? And I'm thinking how, the whole book was about what is weather, and I really didn't expect, or I hadn't actually thought about how some stuff seems like it could be weather, or it would be, but it's not. So they're talking about what isn't weather, like the seasons. The seasons are not weather, and that's something I didn't think about before. So it sort of looks like this section is really teaching us some of the basics of weather, almost like an introduction on the topic. And then you can notice each of the sections after that are kind of organized in the same way, with pictures, pop-out boxes, captions, an intro, and a title for each page. Okay, so take a minute to finish up recording what you've noticed, how I revved up. Even maybe include that little mistake so you don't make that same mistake that I did at the beginning.